Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. And appreciate everyone joining to talk a little bit about observIQ and walk through some of the things that we're doing over here in Grand Rapids. So I'm Mike Kelly. I'm the CTO at observIQ and with the organization for quite some time now, actually since 2012 in one form or another. So, a couple folks on the call here were there before when it was a previous organization, Blue Medora, which I'll talk about a little bit. I think it's helpful to just know the full history of that. So mostly I wanted to just have a conversation and go through some of the things that folks on the call think are interesting, and also show some of the things that we're working on at observIQ, talk a little bit about the product and spend a few minutes in demo. So the idea would be just give a little bit of a background on observIQ and what we've done, how we got where we're at, and then kind of go through the platform, talk about DevOps and areas. We can dig into areas that are interesting, and sounds like folks here are already doing some cool things I'd love to hear about as well. But I guess to start off is, sounds like this group is pretty familiar with observability, at least at the high level, and monitoring, log monitoring, metric monitoring, things like that. Is that accurate? Does that seem right for this audience?
Yeah, I think at a high level. I feel
at a high level?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I think that's why I'm kind of curious on what things I don't know yet.
Yeah, that's perfect, and that's a good place. It's everyone has, or any group you talk to is at can be at all different levels, and it's just like to get that level set. So just generally, when we talk about what is observIQ, it's the history of the company, and you heard a couple people mention Blue Medora, right? So we're a Grand Rapids based startup, and have been previously we were Blue Medora. That was founded in 2012. The entire time was focused on developing integrations, metric monitoring, log monitoring, and other kind of integrations to help bigger organizations and bigger companies like VMware, for example, or Google, or New Relic, help them expand their ability to monitor different components. So it's kind of a really, it's always been a very unique work that we were doing, I think, from a DevOps perspective, because we dealt with hundreds of different technologies. So it was, whether it was new cloud technologies that we were finding ways to monitor and understand better, or physical hardware, data centers. We actually buy a bunch of servers and switches and things that represent what our customers were using, enterprise customers, or enterprise applications like SAP, databases, really kind of anything you can imagine that you would see in that an IT team would be responsible for. We were finding ways to monitor and manage, and then extending that functionality to these other companies. And that was as a company, as Blue Medora, we did that for a number of years and grew as a startup, like I said, based in Grand Rapids, and got to the point where we had some very strong and pretty significant partnerships, the biggest of which was VMware. And then about a year ago was when VMware ended up, they eventually said, hey, you have a lot of business that's going through this, and so we're just going to purchase that entire business unit. And so that's when we had this company split, where the majority of the company went to VMware, and the products that we were building for them went there. And then a smaller team stayed with observIQ to move forward with some of the stuff that we were already working on, and rebranded it as observIQ, and took some of the things that we were doing that were more related to log management, log monitoring, and then started to really focus on that going forward. So that's a little bit of the background and how we got here. We're based in Grand Rapids. Like I mentioned, we were previously Blue Medora. Now we're observIQ as of about a year ago. And so now, if we think, all right, what do we do today at observIQ? And that's it's changed a bit, but our focus is still in observability. So it's a little bit maybe a little bit dated way of thinking of it, but a lot of times in the past, people would say, you're talking about monitoring systems. So if you're in IT, DevOps, a developer, and you're trying to understand the environment, understand the health, get alerts, diagnose problems quickly, prevent problems, you're usually looking at a few different components. You're looking at metrics, right? So, and the simplest version of that is, what's the CPU look like on this? What is, is my CPU load or memory usage or disk usage? Those metrics, you're alerting on those and you're monitoring those. And then you also have traces. This is where you're embedding it inside of your application and looking at it as it flows through. So you can get some more detailed, but more detailed information, but it typically requires that you actually instrument your applications. And then there's log data. And so those three components are usually what people think of as the telemetry that makes up observability. And the log data is just like you'd imagine. It's actual log files that exist all over your systems. And for folks that have been doing this for a long time, at one point you would SSH into a system and you find that log file, and you'd grep their system files and try and figure out what was going on. And at some point, someone said, no, that's not going to work. Like, we don't want to do that anymore. We won't do that anymore because it's not scalable. And that's when everyone started pulling things together into a single location and saw all the value in having a centralized log storage log solution for all of your system logs. So everything inside of your environment, all of your servers, all of your applications, pulling all that data into a single location to help you diagnose those issues much, much faster. And so at observIQ, to answer that question, what we do is we develop a log management platform. And our unique take on this is to really focus on people who are maybe smaller teams, where they're not looking for something that requires an entire team to deploy this and get this out there, but you can get it up very, very quickly. Install it with a one-line installation, automatically start pulling data in, we create dashboards automatically for users. So the idea is really simplifying the experience and letting people get up and running extremely fast, faster than any other solution that's out there. Really focusing in on that log management component. So that's what we do, and I'll talk through the product and walk through a demo in a second. I will say that one other component of this work is we've over the last couple of years, we've really started to do a lot of work in open source. And so that's relevant as well, because over time, for many years, we were just developing proprietary technology, proprietary agents and solutions. And at some point that our customers started requiring something else. They really were looking for an open source solution. And so we develop our agent, the agent that we released. So the application that is installed and gathers the logs and sends them up is extremely high performance, configurable. We developed that as an open source agent, and then it eventually was accepted into the CNCF and the Open Telemetry project specifically as the log management component. So that's a little bit about what we do. I'll dig into more. And of course, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just let me know and stop me along the way. Happy to answer them. So talk through most of those. And, I kind of went through log management a little bit, but just to get into a bit more detail on what this means in sort of the landscape. People use this for a few different things. As I mentioned, one is just pulling all the data together, pulling all of your logs into a single location. And there are a lot of ways that they do that. There are a lot of tools out there that people use. Some that folks may already be familiar with. Some people may have heard of, like Splunk or Elastic or Elk Stack. Elastic and Elk is an open source solution. You can spin it up on your own and get your logs into there. Splunk is its own proprietary solution. It's more focused on the security side of things. And there are a number of others, range from hosting solutions to otherwise. But what we found is more and more often people are looking for, it's kind of becoming a requirement that you have something in place. And that's a challenge for some of these smaller teams. So that's really where we're focused, is making it easier to get into log management, making it easier to get set up, and while not reducing the power of it. So this is, while it's easy to get going, it's as powerful as the existing solutions that you may be familiar with. Let me skip through a couple of these because, this is, well, I'll go through them quickly anyway, but from our perspective, log management is traditionally a pretty complicated and intensive process just getting set up. So most folks, especially if you're using open source, it requires that you're setting up and managing this stack, which is not a trivial thing for most orgs. It means that you're deploying and managing agents across your environment. So if you have thousands of servers, well, that's thousands of agents, and you're either doing that manually, you're doing that with some automation. But however it is that you're handling that, it's going to be a significant load that you're adding onto your team. And then finally, there's this. Typically, you can get all that set up, and you have your data flowing. And this is one of those moments, I think, when as an engineer, just in general, you're like, I've got this whole system, I got everything set up. It took me days and days. I have everything instrumented. Now I have all the data. It's all here. And what do I do with it? Right? Like you have it all, but there's nothing to make of it yet. There's no, until you start to build, either you build up your alerting, you kind of talk to folks who are subject matter experts to understand it. That's not far enough. And so that's kind of the final step, is actually configuring these sources, kind of building out parsing for those, creating visualizations that all require subject matter expertise. So we looked at those three challenges, and that's really where we put our focus. And there are some, when we look at the existing solutions, some of them will have like a hosted solution, but we think that they're missing some of those components. So the ability to install fast, configure fast, and to actually see value in the product, that's where we're trying to focus the product, and did. And so I'll go into a demo in just a second, but I want to just highlight a couple things to keep an eye out for. And if I happen to skip over them, just someone flag me, let me know to go back to them. But one area that we focus on is agent deployment. So to deploy the log agent, this is what gathers logs for you, what parses them, what understands them. It's a single line installation. Typically this is, with most solutions, it's far more complicated. I pulled up one that had like 12 pages of instructions. We just have copy and paste. You can do it more complicated if you want, but that's like the easiest version of it. It's ready to go in a few seconds. We have support for, basically every operating system that our customers are running, every version of, not every version, but all the core versions of Linux that enterprise customers are using. Same with Windows, Kubernetes. A lot of folks are using this, other Kubernetes clusters. And that's opposed to what is either manual installation or sort of managing that install process on your own. And the next that's unique to our platform is we have this agent lifecycle management. So it's another one of these really time-consuming things, which is if you deploy a fleet of agents, you need to update them. You need to patch them. You need to manage that whole process, and this is all just taken care of for you. So it's fully automated, remote agent management. It means that you can push an update, push a configuration, doesn't require an external solution, and it'll automatically keep those things up to date. And then I mentioned we built this open source log agent, and the reason we did, we don't typically just decide we're going to build something for no reason. We want to use products that are already out there, and there are a number of these products out there. And so our focus here was we wanted something that was high performance, but also extremely configurable, and that allowed you to manipulate logs. So one of the challenges that you have with log agents in general, log management, is you can grab the data, you can grab the raw data, and that's good. That's a good first step. But the thing that you run into very quickly is you say, well, we have this raw data, but it has all this meaning, these meaningful metrics within it, or it has meaningful metadata that you want to attach to it. And so the next step that you get to really, really quickly is, well, it'd be really great if we could parse this and say, I know what this log line looks like. Let's pull all the key data out of it. That's a lot more meaningful. And so some agents will say they do one thing or the other. You can either stream stuff really fast, or maybe you can parse that data, but it's going to be kind of slow and memory intensive. And so we wanted both of those, and that's what we were targeting with the release of that. And then earlier this year, we actually came to an agreement with OpenTelemetry to include our agent in that going forward. So we're in the process of having that merged into the OpenTelemetry project, which has been great for us. I'll talk a little bit about OpenTelemetry a bit further, but I think it's a really significant project in telemetry and in observability in general.
Hey, Mike, do you want me to link just the blog post that you wrote that goes into some more detail? So
yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Sure. And then finally, we have 50 integrations, or over 50 now, that are just focused on individual technologies. So this was kind of as I mentioned before, one of the last things that becomes difficult is, right, if you don't have something already built, then the customer is forced to do that on their own. Because of our history of doing this for other organizations, we could pull together all of these plugins and dashboards and visualizations really quickly, and had that knowledge in house. So those are kind of the main ones. This is the only like salesy slide that you'll see from me, and maybe Bryce will say something else. I don't know, but this is just the main thing I want to point out here is we have a free tier that anyone can jump in and use. So you get 3 days of retention. And up to 3 gigs a day. So it's a lot of people just, they want to try it out. It's easy to use. You can use it internally. And then pricing for the rest of the tiers is extremely competitive with other platforms out there. Oh, and okay. Yeah, I thought I was going to have a demo first, but let me just do a quick overview of what we've done with OpenTelemetry, and Bryce already is going to post that. But basically, the core is, I mentioned Stanza, that's our log agent. And then OpenTelemetry is, for folks who haven't heard of it yet, I think you will if you're using, any type of monitoring solution. It's a really great project, and it was the goal of which was to standardize the way you gather data. So it standardizes how you gather metrics, it standardizes how you gather logs, as well as traces. And it's, extremely well supported standard that's being created by pretty much all the major organizations that are doing anything within observability. So, so I do think that, I hesitated to say it at first, but I do think that this is going to be really where things are going, and people are willing to standardize on this. And what that means for us is, for folks in this community is, well, you can deploy the same thing, wherever you need it. So you can deploy the same thing to gather metrics, regardless of what platform you end up using, which I think is great. And that's really where we've started to push our contributions for the telemetry side of things. Yeah, so that was a lot of talking. And I will not fully stop talking, but I will show you a demo, which I think will be more interesting for a lot of folks. So this is.
Should we pause for a moment in case there's any questions based off of all that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Bryce. I'll just keep going. Yeah, unless someone tells me to stop for a second.
Yeah, Adam, Keith, Kevin, any feedback on any of that, or anything unclear after all of that?
Yeah, I did have a really small little question, just based on the concept around the auto updating of the agent. How would that work in a scenario where it's air gapped? I'm no longer in that scenario, but for a few years there, I was in a completely, almost completely offline scenario.
Yeah, it doesn't, is the short answer. But I mean, yeah. So like we have other solutions though, like that's not, so, but for that, for the way that it's set up right now, what we're looking at, it won't allow you to do it in those situations. However, there are other solutions kind of down the road. As I mentioned, we're doing quite a bit with open source and expanding what those options are. So right now with the solution, this is a SaaS offering. So, for the data will be in the cloud. And so there is that right? You have to be willing to move your data to the cloud for this. You can, though, you can still use all the open source tools that we've created, the open source agent, and just point it to something internally. So if you were to run your own systems, you can still use our agent for that and take advantage of all the benefits of that. So that's one, that's one component of it, assuming that you still have, at least a, it depends on how locked down it is. And really there's so many different scales of it. And I'm sure you've run into this before, right? It's like, it depends on what the level of lockdown is to, depends on how far you can go with that.
We're running our stuff on AWS Lambda functions all the time. It seems like for those, we would obviously have like a name. Well, I believe that there isn't like an agent that you can install, and so is it through like the CloudWatch logs that you would be pulling in and ingesting that kind of?
Yeah, yep. You can pull them in directly from the logs like that, and you can still end up pushing out an agent and using it for multiple things. So one thing that you can do is have like a single agent that gathers from multiple different locations or multiple different sources. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like installed on a system, even though that's a very common use case, right? A lot of times you're installing it and getting it locally, but you can also be pulling it from, a dozen different places, if that makes sense, or pulling in syslog or, wherever it could be coming from.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
Cool. So I will give just a quick overview and then we'll go from there. So the thing I'd like to point out first is just we have a few tabs across the top, and this is the most helpful way in understanding the product. There are, 4 kind of key components. There's Explore, and if you've used Elastic, the Elastic Stack, you may be familiar with this interface. It's a fairly heavily modified version of Kibana, but it has a lot of the same kind of what you expect in terms of the ability to search and query and view the data. There's this fleet component, which is what I mentioned before. This is the ability to automatically deploy, manage, configure. I'll show how that works in a second. Alerts are pretty straightforward. It's generating alerts based off of your logs. They can be sent to Slack or PagerDuty or directly to email, whatever you want to configure that for. And then the live tail is, like it may sound, it's like tailing a log file. So you can just jump into your system, go to whatever node or application or filter it down to just critical areas, however you want, and see that filtering in real time. So just to show, because I like, to show folks how easy it is to get this up and running, I think that's kind of a key differentiator here. I'll show you what it's like to just add an agent. This is a Kubernetes environment, so I'm actually monitoring a cluster, but I can just as easily add in a macOS agent, like I mentioned before. And like I said, it's just, copying that command, throw it in the terminal. And what that does is it just installed the Stanza agent that I was mentioning before. So it installed it, and now it's fully managed by observIQ. And it showed up here already. So it said, okay, I've got this agent, I just deployed it. It automatically installed this macOS source. So it'll start grabbing my system logs from macOS. If it was Windows, it'd do the same thing. Linux would do something similar. I can jump into Explore logs, which I'll do in a second, and that will just show me the data coming in real time. Or I can go in and add more sources. And this is where, like I mentioned before, we have a whole range of different sources that are available. And this can be either, excuse me, packaged applications. You mentioned CloudWatch logs; those are available here, but also things like databases, Aerospike, Cassandra, others. And I could put in. I'm running Postgres on here, so I can drop a Postgres source on here as well. And it'll automatically fill in what the expected path is, so we know what the typical default path is. If that's where it is, you're great. If not, it's a quick little change. But that's all it requires to set up a new source. I can click create, and then it would automatically start sending data. And anything here, we have a number of them. We're saying a few that are supported. In this one, there are a number of generic sources. So a lot of times you're looking for your own application to monitor something in your own application, and you just want to use like a raw file. Maybe you have a CSV file or JSON or whatever it might be. You can support any of those, and it's really simple. So if I have like a, let's say I just chose CSV. Now, if I have a CSV on my Mac, I can just drop in a file path here. It'll automatically include that. If there's a header, I add that there, and that's really all there is to it. So it's pulling in data without requiring you to go into those systems, mess with config files. You can if you want, we let you. So if you really want to go in and tweak all the little dials, you can do that too. But the basics are available here, and they're all set to go from the beginning, from when you just first start. So I'm going to throw in a Postgres one, even though I know path isn't probably going to give me data right away. So now I can see I have, an agent tells me what version I'm on. It gives me a little bit of data about the system, and then it tells me, what sources I'm monitoring and how much data is coming through. So I just started to get data from one of those sources. Tells me what my computer is way overloaded on memory usage for some reason. We can dig into that too if we want to. But from here, I can go right into something like Livetail. And that would filter it down to those. I don't know if I'm going to have. Okay, so I do have some logs. I already have a couple of issues that's identifying something's failing to register and something's failing. So just by clicking through installing that, I'm seeing I'm already getting a few errors on my own system, which isn't great, was unexpected. We'll solve that later. But what's probably more interesting to other people, rather than looking at my MacBook logs, is this sample logs that are coming in through Kubernetes. And so that's really what you're seeing here. This is, high level drill down view. You can see we're running Nginx. See a few of my macOS system issues as well. But Nginx, Kubernetes, that's all available. And we can filter down really easily by things like severity. So a lot of times I just want to look at the errors. I'll filter down by those errors. You can see I'm getting a number of Nginx errors. I can go to a specific source or agent, look at them by source. So it could be by templates or Postgres or macOS, or even in more detail. So I'm going to look at the events specifically. So there's a Kubernetes event, back off restarting failed container. This is one that we see often, can be a problem, but what I wanted to show you here, and then I'll go into some dashboards, is I mentioned before how an agent, by default, you can just send raw data. But what we really try and do is to augment that data with interesting, detailed metadata from the systems. So is it things like the name of the agent, the version, but more relevant to things like Kubernetes, we're going to have related items to Kubernetes, whether it's the deployment, the namespace, the cluster, the pod, everything really that you're used to seeing in terms of metadata around that is going to augment the log line. And why this matters is, one of the biggest and kind of more critical ways that you want to use this is generating alerts. What this allows you to do is filter that down into very specific areas, very specific applications, and create those alerts or create those visualizations or drill into data with filtering much easier than you can if it's just raw log data. And it also allows us to do things like this. So when I installed that macOS agent, observIQ detected that we were now sending macOS data. And as soon as it detected that we were sending macOS data, it said, all right, well, I know how to interpret that data. And so I'm going to install a dashboard for macOS. And so you can go to macOS. It also, when we first set it up for Kubernetes, it said, well, I know this is data coming from a Kubernetes cluster. Let's install some Kubernetes dashboards. And that's what it does. So it throws in some default dashboards. Let me try. I'll back out. I may have messed up one of these dashboards. So try the other one. That one looks a little better. So it automatically will create dashboards for you that you can then change and break if you're me. But they're also available for changing and customizing so that they support your specific use cases, right? So the idea is what we want to do is bake in as much intelligence about the technology from our perspective and take subject matter expertise from our team, include it in these dashboards, and then give you a starting spot so you can then use those to modify and take the next step, make it more tailored to your specific use case. And here's an example of this. We see cluster events by error, for example. So it's looking at those specific errors that we're seeing. The deployment, so you can actually see where this is being deployed and where those errors are coming from. Things like the events by severity over time, which is really helpful. So you'll see a lot of times you'll see a spike in those errors, and you use this to identify when it happened. If there's anything cascading, you'll be able to see that right in this graph. And these are not static dashboards. That's what's really, really nice about this. These are all dynamic dashboards, which means you can use them to drill into issues. So a static dashboard by itself can be limited in use. I think that there are good uses for them, but it's much more beneficial if you're able to use that same view, drill into specific areas, and solve your issues really fast. That's what this lets you do. So that's just a quick overview of Kubernetes. I'll do just one more really fast, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we do some of this. So another one that people use platform for, people use it for a lot of different things, and this is a general log solution platform. So I'm showing a couple examples, but you can really use this for anything in your environment. You can use this for your own custom applications. This is one that we've seen a lot of customers using it for, which is looking at Windows events specifically. Because it's so easy to deploy, and Windows can traditionally be really challenging to monitor events and to kind of alert and filter on those. This is taken hold and with folks who are looking for a quick, easy solution to get that deployed and start monitoring their Windows events. So this is another example of a dashboard we have looking at application system and health. And actually, what's I think more interesting oftentimes is this security and logons view. So this is just pulling data from a number of different Windows servers. We have intentionally exposed them, so you get somewhat malicious traffic, probably malicious traffic. I don't think these are just friendly folks that are trying to log into these systems over and over again. Joe could probably tell you if that's true or not. I don't know. But you see, the location, and no one on my team, I don't think, is currently traveling in any of these locations. So you see all the attempted logins, and you start to see all the attempted failed logins. We've had folks that have deployed this to a number of systems, and then within minutes, they pull the dashboard like this, and they say, okay, all right, well, I need to turn that system off immediately and lock it down because we're seeing that there's a problem there. So just things like that, but we have dozens of examples of using the product for whether it's security, application monitoring, and being able to really quickly jump in and get to data or get to value with your data. The last thing I'll mention, because this is something that some of you mentioned dealing with some compliance environments earlier or more challenging security environments. A lot of times you'll hear, well, I need to save that data for a year or 7 years or whatever it might be. In the platform, we want real data or available, easy to access data for up to 30 days. And that's what most of our customers are looking for. But we also allow you to archive that data, and it's still accessible. You can still search it, but we allow you to archive it at at no additional cost for the platform, but you can just send it directly to a bucket that you have in AWS, for example. So send all that data off, maintain it for as long as you need to for compliance reasons, and it's available to you. Yeah, so I think that was the main piece that I wanted to run through here. Before you just maybe spend a few minutes talking about how we're doing some of this and some of the things that Joe works on from a DevOps perspective. But first, any questions about the platform?
I guess specifically around the archive concept that you just brought up, is that just you ship all the data off to one bucket, or if the customer provided, multiple labels, they have enriched data to start with, where it's like, oh yeah, this is, you know what I mean? Because I've just been in situations before where, like login attempts, like that is, that meets a different standard than, the number of HTTP requests per minute or something like that,
Yeah. So we have a couple of ways that we allow customers to segment it. Right now, it's primarily project based. You can set up a project that says, hey, this is some type of core data that I want to make sure we ship off to store for X period of time. And then another project, maybe you just don't care. You're not going to ship that at all. So that's one way that people that are using that today. And then we have had a number of requests to be able to do it at like a finer grain, like you're saying. So actually be able to parse out specific data and then send it to different locations. That's not in the product yet, but I think that that's something that we've looked at pretty seriously on the roadmap to give more fine grained control. So today it's managed through projects and not at that same level though, but you can do it. You can just split up your data into a couple different projects for that purpose. Excellent.
Mike, could I get in a couple of marketing things before you go to the next part?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you got 30 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I can do it. So I wanted to reinforce how easy it is to get started, because 90% of our users stream logs in under 5 minutes. So, or under 10 minutes, sorry. Still pretty quick in comparison to days. So we tell people just pick it up on your lunch break, try it out. And then if that doesn't work for you, move on to the things that take more time. So if you end up using the product and it takes you more than 10 minutes, please let us know immediately, because there's probably like, I don't know, some issue or something, like a path file configured wrong, and we can help you with that, or file path configured wrong. The other thing about the pricing that Mike showed, Mike's not going to be thrilled with me saying this, but we are very flexible on the pricing for anyone that's local. We'd rather have you use the product, get us feedback, help us make it better. We want to build this with the community. So if you see price and you're like, I don't know how this is going to work, just don't worry about it. Just message us. And then you don't have to react now, but I'd love to hear about any integrations that you'd want to see to make this better. Especially from a DevOps perspective, any integrations that you'd need, how we could make this work better with a CI/CD workflow. Very curious about that. We're working on some things for more like a dev persona, with like working on ways to send front end logs to here as well, doing things like that, but more from hearing about your perspective of DevOps in your DevOps role, that'd be great. And then Mike, I don't know if you could briefly touch on how this works for like a consultancy or an agency model, because I think that's something that's unique about our product too, is that you can support multiple clients in here without having multiple accounts, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. All good points too. I think we are looking for any of your specific use cases at this point. I think it's been really great to talk with folks locally, especially close to locally, right, within just a short drive, and getting their perspective. But specifically for like consultancies, so this is one area where some folks have expressed a lot of interest, because it's really easy to set this up for, like I mentioned, a lot of different projects, and each project can have its own users and permissions. So what we've had customers do is, you can see here, and you already saw me use this, although I went through it so quickly. I have a number of existing solutions or projects that are connected to this. And this is going to be familiar to a lot of project-based systems that you've used before. But what our customers do is they'll set up a project for each individual customer. They'll grant them access. And then a lot of times what they would do, so for example, development shops, is they would have, you know, a specific project they create for each either company or each application that they're developing, and get their customers set up and ready to go. And then it's just, you know, it's all set. You hand it over, it's in a nice package basically. And it's fine if, you know, you want to maintain that admin status, or even just give it to them and let them take it from there. But what it allows you to do is manage all of these multiple customers, and same with permissions and security separately. So we have found that's, you know, something that a lot of folks are interested in. I'll also say, you know, yeah, it is really fast to get this set up. If you run into any questions or have any issues, we're also very responsive. Just, you know, send us a note, and if you want to name drop me, that'll be great too. And happy to answer any questions you may have or help you get set up. So I'll pause and just because I think the one question that Bryce would be worth just pausing and hearing if anyone has it is, are there certain use cases or areas where you feel like either log management has missed the mark in the past, or they're just, you know, challenges that you've run into where there hasn't been a clear solution?
Well, one thing that Bryce reminded me of as he mentioned CI/CD is, you know, I've in the past have tried to add some custom events, you know, like messing with, you know, Grafana and stuff like that, to try to have like, here's a mark representing, here was a release, so that I can see when metrics change that it's associated with an event. And so I just kind of wonder, are there, you know, are there specific things you're doing to be able to allow people to, you know, essentially mark point in time, here's a significant thing that we know happened. And so if we see changes, you know, after that versus before that, we should probably correlate that with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the nice things about allowing for, you know, full metadata like this, is that you can add, you really have full control over what you add over there. So you can add a label or a tag or something unique to your environment, and that can all be done here. Or, you know, and there's a lot that's already included. So if it's a system that's already well understood, we probably have those flags, and those flags are changing over time. The other thing, you know, that is possible with what we're doing, since we developed the agent and are you know, develop the plugins and are very familiar with all this, you know, we're always interested in hearing if there's something that you're looking for or need a kind of a solution. It's really easy to pull together a new plugin, either by us or by you, right? It's very easy to customize this for your unique application with that pretty powerful, basically just a YAML file that tells it how to parse this data, whether it's through regexes or, you know, special filters, chopping data up, putting it into different tags. Yeah. So, but if there is a specific, you know, use case, if there's something that you're like, hey, I really want this specific, I want to solve this specific problem, I would say shoot us a message, and we'd be happy to put something together.
Mike, you could also look for the deployment events, right? So when the new version of code is deployed, for example, you could just filter on that, look for that. Okay.
Exactly. Do right along the search bar here. Yep.
Sweet.
I'm interested in like the application, like custom application log kind of pieces, and I know that those can be logged to different things that you mentioned. But I was just curious about anything that's like hooks into like the way I do .NET stuff, and there's like iLog or some of those things that would, you know, do at the beginning and end of requests, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, so we do, like I mentioned, there are some of these that are more what we would call sources that are designed specifically for those generic types of log sources. And so those are all available, but you can also go in and take the next step and create your own custom. So for a lot of the power users, and I don't really go into that level of detail with or haven't gone into it with this, it allows you to do everything that you're seeing here for a very, for say Kubernetes can be done with your own custom application. And there are, the next step, which I'll just give you a little bit of future looking, kind of sense of the platform as well. Because this is based on OpenTelemetry, it allows, right? OpenTelemetry is designed for logs. I mentioned that, right? That was the core piece that we've worked on, but also metrics and also traces, right? And so whether it's looking at log traces through an application, that's all available with this component. And right now we have this designed specifically for logs, and I think that's where there is the biggest gap. But we're pretty quickly starting to add in other components like metric functionality and trace functionality that's relevant, and maybe is kind of what some of the stuff that you're thinking of as well. And that's a full, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it is just like errors and wanting to know when they happen and making sure you're capturing like things like stack trace and all this certain stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Along with things, but it's I feel like sometimes the challenge I have is just filtering through a lot of the information that we have and trying to actually see it. So that's what, curious about these, but also curious about OpenTelemetry, because I've seen like that's the kind of thing that you might be able to tie into at the application specific level, like with using Java or .NET or Node or something, and how they are building their logging in an open way. But I'm not really familiar with OpenTelemetry, honestly. So.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a really interesting project, and yeah, like you mentioned, it is looking at all three of kind of the core components. So, and that's that's why we're focused on that, because if you think about it, most of the time, every organization, every company had to develop their own log tracing framework, right? There were a few of them out there that were open source, but they never really took off and grabbed a significant market share. And now everyone is really backing this OpenTelemetry project. And it is available. Yeah, I mean, you can, if you have, you can have Go services or Java services or whatever it is. They have really great support for languages already. It's still a fairly new project, so that's all available. And what we've done with this is, this is the first platform that actually can manage OpenTelemetry. So these OpenTelemetry collectors, and right now, everyone out there, you have to do a manual installer. You can write like automate it using other DevOps tools, but we provide a fully managed OpenTelemetry collector, and that's in right now. That's beta for us, but it's using that same technology. So we developed the Stanza log agent, where we have it's a part of OpenTelemetry now, and so now that that's in there, we're moving to OpenTelemetry. All that to say that you'll start to see more functionality like that because it's available to us, starting to come into the platform. So we're 20. Any questions or kind of things that people are interested in us getting into?
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious of like what sort of business drivers are leading people to knock on your door, right? Is it simply that their systems keep crashing and they can't keep them up, or what are some of those? I found a couple things on your website already, but I'm just sort of interested in your words. What happens on the business side that says call observIQ?
Yeah, and there are several, I'd say, and but a lot of times it is looking for a solution to kind of quickly diagnose issues in a complex system. I mean, that's one of the biggest is, and there are a lot of ways to get to that. I would say there are a lot of ways to get to that. There are not many ways to get to that quickly in terms of being able to deploy something and have something up and running that you can use, like I said, without a whole professional services engagement, and getting things, So I think that is like number one. Yeah, go ahead. And I think that sometimes it's driven by specific use case as well. We do see that sometimes, which is, folks are coming in and saying, I need a way to manage hundreds of these Windows systems and look at these, say, potentially suspicious logins, or my Kubernetes system. I think that's one of the things that we do really well is monitor, manage your Kubernetes systems and provide that all in a single location quickly and easily. We've had a lot of folks that are using it specifically for that.
Right. So maybe they're like, we've been doing Kubernetes for a year now, and we tried a couple things, and we tried a homegrown solution. We probably looked at the Dynatraces of the world as like, wow, that's outrageous, right?
Yeah, and that's a lot of times what you'll see is, you've gone out. We see this with, I'd say, the majority of customers. Folks who have looked at existing solutions and just decided this is a really heavy lift for us to actually get all this working. It's very complex to just get started with it. And then, we convince people to try it. A lot of times, honestly, a lot of times a customer like that is very difficult to convince because they just don't believe that it can be simpler. They'll say it's not possible to actually get this deployed and get meaningful data quickly.
Yeah.
I saw what it looks like with company X,
Yeah. IT has to be painful, right? It must be painful.
Yeah. And so, we've really focused in on making it not that, and now it's Bryce's job to convince people that that's true. Right?
Yeah. So,
and get them into the product to try it.
An anecdote on that is, so we used a paid beta testing site, right, where we get users to test our product. We pay them to use it. And in our test description, it says, this is a log management platform and it's really easy to use. And we were compensating them at, whatever dollar amount. And then there were people who were seeing the test and they said, no, this can't be done in the time that they're saying. So I'm not going to do it. And it was really interesting because people would read, who had any experience before with log management would say that's impossible. And the people who didn't have experience would sign up and would do it. And they were, 90% of people install in under 10 minutes. And so we have this perception problem that we're battling, and we believe we're reinventing the paradigm here. So it's a paradigm shift. So it's really hard. So we're struggling with that right now. And then also the people who wear it like a badge of honor, like Mike's saying, like, hey, I spent 2 months setting this thing up. I'm not going to undo it for this.
It's job security, right? So
yeah, I would say another business driver is changeover in the organization. And like the last guy loved managing this open source solution that was their full-time job to maintain, but the new guy doesn't. And then, annually when they see how much they spent on the other products, and they start searching us. And then a very common persona is someone who tried other products that are difficult and couldn't get to work, and they go with us. So those are like the big business drivers for why people sign up.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
And of course, Grand Rapids, Michigan is an appeal too, right? Because it's more of a small Midwestern kind of feel versus, I don't know, some of the other companies are big Silicon Valley who gives a crap kind of things. To me, my guess is part of your feel is you've already mentioned it, like in terms of quality service and things like that.
You saw Mike bring up the little intercom pop up, and you saw Joe's face on there. Like, you get Joe. Joe will be there. He will respond, and Joe cares a lot about you, and will make sure that you get the support you need. So it's a white glove support as well. That we're helping a lot of people who struggled with other log management solutions. So when they come to us and they have someone saying, "Hey, it looks like that file path is configured incorrectly. Maybe try this." It just it helps them get over that hump, and they're happy about it.
Yeah, and again, I'm a big proponent of using Midwestern nice to our advantage, right? Says, sure, right? If you just want the latest whiz bang, it's over here, but it's easy to use, and we'll take care of you. For the customers that want that, let's drive them to companies like yours.
I hear about structured logging, things like Serilog or Seek, I think, and is that something that open telemetry or something that you have within the platform to be able to query for certain data that's not like just a node in the JSON, but like I think, as I understand, I believe it's like replacing data like saying like this I don't know, order was for X dollars, and then you could replace the data, you know, with that, and then you can aggregate information across those logs, anything like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Log is the .NET plugin that you can use for your logging, and then Seek is the database that actually stores it. So it'd be similar to like Elastic.
I see. Oh, so it's a whole different storage platform. So it's probably not something that just any log management software would use. It's got to be pretty specific.
I mean, I would say personally, you know, having gone from having used, I didn't use Seek itself, but we used Cosmos DB. That's the one.
Oh yeah. Okay.
We're using Cosmos DB with Log, and you know, it stored the data in more of a columnar format, so you could do that quick aggregation. But I went from that to using kind of a more, we'll say, generic Elastic Stack, and you can get the data. You know, worst case scenario, it was you'd go into Kibana, you know, get your query, export it to Excel, run your pivot tables, whatever.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, you know, what you saw in the dashboard there, where they're showing the different elements, you know, the different properties of a document, you know, as long as you've got it stored in that format, regardless of how it got spit in there, you're going to be able to pull that back out and pull your aggregations, you know, get your different insights based on the different, you know, kind of pivots that you would want to do.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I have to look at that a little bit more, but it was just always something that seemed kind of interesting to me because of the things like working within .NET. I don't think that the iLogger, like that's the generic implementation of like logging, supports the structured logging anyway. So it wouldn't really work probably real well, but I'm just curious if it was something that was part of like what they were thinking when they're going down this open telemetry in the logging section, to know if that was something that they were thinking about, or if it's, you know, what that really looks like, you know? So.
Yeah, and if there's anything, and again, you know, I throw this out there a lot, but if there's something specific that you're trying to accomplish, or some type of, you know, something that feels like a complex data problem, we love to hear, because we have some folks internally who really enjoy trying to solve those kind of difficult problems. So, and a lot of times it's easy. It's just, you know, knowing the right type of query and way to manipulate the data.
I don't have the specific ones. To me, it was just more about if we're going to try to implement some type of like standardized logging, does it make sense to go with something like a structured log as being like an upgrade, or is that like overkill and not necessary because it locks us into a certain platform, where if we did something that was more generic, gives us more flexibility? Because a lot of them are good because you have these like concepts of a sync. I don't know if it's the same thing in these, where you can specify where do you want your logs to go. And so it's always nice to be able to try something out like this. If we could just say, hey, point this thing to observIQ, and then send all the logs to that, you know. So. And
that is what you know, that is kind of the promise of open telemetry in a lot of ways, which is, you know, and I think it ends up being a bit fragmented because a lot of people have their own distribution of open telemetry, or I think that's where it's going. But despite that, you can still enter in you know, you can basically set it up once for whatever your, you know, logs, metrics, traces, and then you can decide where that data goes. And it can go, you know, wherever you want it to go, or multiple places. And it's all, most of the major vendors support that now, or they will be supporting it soon. So I do think that gives you a lot of flexibility in that same type of sense, right? Like you can send it pretty much anywhere. You configure it once. That's the idea behind it.
Sure.
And I add that one of the things that we try and do is provide structure to unstructured blocks. So if you have something that does not have that, then we can create a plugin and, you know, add that layer of data in. And that's some of what you're seeing in the application itself. It's, you know, it's taking something that's not that is, you know, can be very raw and unstructured, and then providing some form to it and adding the metadata to it. So you have options, or you can just, you know, not worry about it and deal with it as unstructured. Yeah. I think that was basically everything I had. A couple of other items I wanted to throw this out there. One more slide for Bryce. Make sure that you sign up and try it out for free. Just go to observIQ.com, and it's, like I mentioned, there's a free tier that you can use. A free trial that shows up. You can get in under 10 minutes. It's, you know, and we love to hear feedback, especially from folks who, sounds like a very knowledgeable group here already, and I like talking to folks that are in the area as well. So,
Mike, to add to that, and Brendan, I wanted to talk about this with you, but we want to do a promotion for the DevOps, Lansing DevOps group, and I probably Lansing codes in general, that for anyone who signs up in September, we'll do, I'll share details on this later, so it's all written up. But if you create an account, connect to a data source, we'll do a $25 gift card. If you tell us about what you liked, or more importantly, what you hated, it's another $25. If you then go to G2 and leave a review, that'll be $50 more. So that's $100 just for, spending 10 minutes with us and telling us what you do or don't like. And then if we get enough people, we'll also do like 1 in 5 people in the group. We'll give out like AirPods or Galaxy Buds, or the equivalent, whatever tech gadget you want in that price range. So 1 in 5 for that, and then one person in the community will give a $500 Amazon gift card too. So this is like $800+ worth of stuff you could get, and this is a really small, relatively small community, so good chance of winning a bunch of stuff here. So I'll share more details on that, but if you want to use the product, there's like no downside. Of course, it's a free thing, and just let us know what you think.
I don't know. I appreciate it. It was great to see, and look forward to trying it out.
Keith, I appreciate everyone.
I have one question for Keith. I need to know, after this conversation, what did you find out about observability that's just a buzzword and not actually?
Didn't even get into that.
Yeah. So yeah, because I've been looking at it more of like, how do I convince a CIO to invest in these things, right? What are closer to the business cases where the CIO says, we're doing a digital transformation and our apps can't go down anymore, or whatever, right? That sort of thing. So I've been trying to translate these technical things into more closer to the business case, right? So things like, right, if you could prevent, for most companies, if you could prevent one outage a year, that's like couple $100,000, right? So that's an easy case to make. Lots around just, this is like, if these are critical business systems and only one old guy that's been there 30 years understands how it works. As soon as he gets hit by a bus, you're in trouble, right? So sometimes it's sort of the democratization of observability is one of the pitches. Certainly a lot of, engineers don't get paged at midnight as often, right? So there's lots of those little things, and each one sounds trivial, but when you add them all up, right, then I'm trying to help make the case for the IT leaders is you've got to focus on observability. There's lots of tools to choose from, but there's also like training. You've got to let people spend time doing it and not just wait for disasters to happen, and all of that. Just tie it into the business metrics, which hopefully will then filter down to vendors like you and help you do some more sales, right?
Yep.
And then my particular interest is in user experience. So I'm still exploring that says, okay, we've got this system and it's kind of slow. Okay, we could make it faster. We know that it's kind of slow. We could make it faster, but do users really care, right? And sometimes it doesn't affect the user experience. And sometimes you don't realize it, but that extra second is really, really important, in which case you now want to invest in it. So that's my personal interest of like, like there weren't any other user experience people here, but at some point I would want some like user researchers here of like, hey, I've been doing user research for one of your clients, and here's the problems that the employees or that the customers are having. How can observIQ help you like pinpoint? It's like, okay, for this issue, I might fix it with a screen redesign, but other things I might have to dive into the actual, the architecture of the system or something. And so then using your tool to figure out that, we've got our Kubernetes cluster organized the wrong way or whatever, right? Whatever those things are, which happens when things get complex. So that's sort of my point of view. And so this was good to help me get into the weeds a little bit more and actually see your tool and see some of the things that address us.
Yeah, you could definitely use observIQ to just like quickly peek at the architecture and see if there's like low-hanging fruit for improvements there. It's like an analogy would be changing the oil on your car before you change out the engine. Like try the 10-minute fix first, go in with observIQ, see if you can figure out what's going on, or investing in spending days or weeks setting something else up. But cool. But awesome. Thanks for the insights on that.
Sure.
If you get a chance to use the product and poke around, if you could give us some feedback about the UX, that'd be amazing, because we really want it to be intuitive and, just help. We want people to get through the setup and get to alerts and use all the features without needing hand holding from anyone. So if you are going through it and you're like, oh, I didn't know where to go next, or, so I just left the product, and that, I didn't know when to come back, those types of things. That we're really curious about the re-entry experience with our product right now, because we think we're pretty strong in the setup, but like what brings them back? Is it an email? Is it, or what's going on? Right.
Right. Yeah. I'll see if I can find some time to do that. Often it would be in the forms of like questions of like, when I came back the second time, I noticed this looked easier and this looked harder or whatever. And then the question would be like, was that on purpose or was that by accident? Right. And it might be like, that was exactly on purpose because I wasn't a representative user trying to do a representative thing. And other times it's like, I don't know, we never thought of that scenario before. So it just sort of randomly happened that this one thing looked harder. This thing was in the upper right and this thing was in the middle of the screen, right? So those would be some of the questions that I would ask, and not necessarily say, you got it wrong. This thing, this thing goes over here and this thing goes over here. But I would just start to ask questions and have you guys think about that one. And some of them were completely thought out and very well done. And other ones would be like, I don't know, we never thought of that before. So, but that's how some that were, again, if you're in Grand Rapids, right, you could find some other user experience folks in Grand Rapids to give you some of that input.
For sure. Thanks.
Yeah, I was actually gonna, similar to what Keith just said, I was gonna say, I'm planning to dig into some of the stuff specifically around the alerts, like you'd mentioned there, Bryce, just to kind of see what that feels like, and then I'd even, could see having a future discussion around, showing kind of a deep dive on some of the connectors there, and kind of in my brain, observability. It's about, you've got kind of that journey of there's data, but you want to turn the data into information, and then ultimately you want that information to turn into knowledge so you can take action on things. And I'd love to see kind of different approaches that you guys would recommend for kind of using the alerts, using the dashboards to be able to kind of make that transformation from just, we've got a ton of logs, versus, transforming that to, we have things that we know how to take action on.
Yeah, I'd love to hear anything that folks have got, or if you're jumping in and trying things out, let us know. Just click the button and you can reach out to Joe. Not this Joe, a different one that's specializes in chatting with customers. No offense, Joe. Yeah,
we have 3 Joes.
Yeah, we got lots of Joes. Awesome. This is a great conversation. Really appreciate everyone joining.
Yeah, thanks for giving us a reason to get together.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Hopefully get to do it in person sometime soon, but we'll see.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Excellent. Well, unless Bryce, you have anything else, I think that we probably wrap it up for today.
No, I'm in the Slack workspace, so if you want to follow up on anything, you can ping me there. Yeah, otherwise, hope to hear from you all soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you soon.
Have a good
Bye.
one.
Yeah.
Bye.